the traditional education model in pretty much all of Western society was really truly designed to, kind of churn out workers for corporations. It's a model of capitalism. It's part of the engine of capitalism. Traditional, Western society capitalist sort of education is, it's designed to take kids, put them into a kind of an assembly line. We're teaching them to memorize, to regurgitate, filling them with facts and facts. I put that in quotes. Dates and things that we're supposed to memorize about history. And really, it's about teaching and honestly a lot of indoctrination into the way that the system works. It's teaching us to how to be consumers, how to be a part of the consumer system. And I think it's really sort of the antithesis of anything natural.
Welcome to the Daily Soul Bytes show. My name is Bola, Abimbola. I am your host and an author of the Daily Soul Bytes book. And this show is where we interview guest authors, coaches, and entrepreneurs to share their insights for the expansion of collective consciousness. And today I have a very special guest all the way from Montana, USA. Her name is Genevieve King. Welcome to the show, Genevieve.
Thank you so much, Bola. I'm very honored to be here.
Thank you for coming. And I'll read a little bit about Genevieve before we start. Genevieve King is the CEO of Origins. With 25 plus years in teaching, she's a specialist in sustainability and children's environmental and mindfulness education. Genevieve is a long-time entrepreneur and founder from the Flathead Reservation in Montana. She's been in early childhood education for over 25 years, as I said. She has extensive experience in corporate sustainability, and she really is specializing in alternative education and climate education. Fantastic. Welcome to the show, Genevieve, again. So tell us who Genevieve King is, first and foremost. How did you get to this place?
I would say that I got to the place that I'm at right now just based on my upbringing, the environment I grew up in, coming from the reservation. I was always very, very intrinsically connected to the land. There's a very strong culture of, connection with nature and just growing up. I also had a mom who was sort of ahead of her time, what we would call eco-conscious now. Back in the 70s and 80s, it was just the way that we did things. We grew food. We had a huge garden. Everything was recycled and reused. And I grew up always being deeply connected to nature, and I think that really just sort of had a deep impact on my own personal views on life, my personal cosmologies, the way that I interact with the world. And I believe truly that was the root of not only, where I would go with my career, but also kind of the spiritual seat, if you will, because I think that is, one of the most, I would say, fundamentally spiritual things is being connected to the earth, where we come from. And I think that's kind of the foundation for how I've, sort of developed my own personal cosmology.
I love that. I think mothers play a really big role in the direction that her children are really going to. My mother was also very before her time, and I really cherish. I remember seeing a book on the shelves at home. She was a librarian. And I was 8. Well, I actually saw the book on the shelf many years before I read it. It was by Ramana Maharishi, and it was titled, Who Am I? And that was really my beginning. So I definitely resonate with that, how parents can play a role in how, the direction that we take as children and adults later in life. So you also became a teacher.
Yes.
And then you really wanted to infuse that natural alternative education in the system. Could you tell me more about your perspective on what is different between the traditional education system and the more spiritually based mindfulness approach that you promote?
Absolutely. Well, the traditional education model in pretty much all of Western society was really truly designed to, kind of churn out workers for corporations. It's a model of capitalism. It's part of the engine of capitalism. Traditional, Western society capitalist sort of education is, it's designed to take kids, put them into a kind of an assembly line. We're teaching them to memorize, to regurgitate, filling them with facts and facts. I put that in quotes. Dates and things that we're supposed to memorize about history, and really, it's about teaching and honestly a lot of indoctrination into the way that the system works. It's teaching us to how to be consumers, how to be a part of the consumer system. And I think it's really sort of the antithesis of anything natural. When we look at, like indigenous cultures from all over the planet, everywhere, have always been much more in tune with their environments, much more in tune with nature. And the education that came about naturally within tribal cultures all over the world is completely different. It's absolutely completely different. And, part of the fundamental foundation of it is how to live in balance. And that's one of the most important things, because we have to take care of the place that takes care of us, the place that supports us. I mean, that's the number one thing. If we're destroying that which sustains us, that's inherently unsustainable. We won't make it as a species. So, I really knew from a young age that I wanted to share these things. And I started out in early childhood education, and it wasn't my career plan. I was going into a medical career initially, and I was trying to find a place to bring my daughter, my oldest daughter. I have two daughters, and it's when she was, like a toddler, and I was trying to find a childcare facility, a preschool to bring her to while I was attending university. And I visited all kinds of places. I went all over the city, and there was no place that I felt truly comfortable leaving my young child, my toddler. Every place I was like, I'm not going to leave. I can't leave her here. And I ended up bringing her to one of the big schools that was on campus at the university, which is a really great school. All of the teachers that work there were getting their degrees in early childhood education. They had big budgets. It was, part of the school, part of the university. But it was huge. And there was like 75 children in the class, which was just completely overwhelming for my daughter. She was a very sensitive, had a very sensitive system, and was had a very difficult time. I would have to peel. She would be holding me, and I would have to peel her fingers off to give her to the teachers, and she would be screaming and crying, and every day. And I felt I had so much mom guilt. I felt so awful leaving her, but I had to go to school. But it was just eating at me. And so I tried to figure out, okay, how can I be with her more? So I changed my whole class schedule around, and I stacked all of my classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays so that I had Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays off. And I decided I'm going to do childcare. So I went and got licensed to do childcare, and I took other kids on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with my daughter. I just had like 4 other children plus my daughter. And it was just supposed to be a little temporary thing to get me through college and allow me to be with my daughter more. But I just ended up falling in love with it. And I taught all these little 3 and 4-year-olds how to read, and I had so much fun. I developed this whole little curriculum for them, and so after I left the university and moved to Washington, I ended up getting another job working at the public school system there. They had some on-site sort of preschools that were a part of, it was a pilot program where they were having preschools part of the grade school. And I got hired as the assistant director there, and they had no curriculum at all. It was just kind of like a daycare, like they sang ABCs and the kids just free played and ran around all day. And I said, "Can I develop a curriculum?" And they said, "Sure, go for it. You can do whatever." So I went into the school and I interviewed all the kindergarten teachers and the first grade teachers, and I asked them, what do you most need kids to know that are coming in? Like what is the ideal amount of education that a kindergartner would need to have to come in that would make your job easier, that would, give them a head start into their scholastic career. And so I sort of developed this sort of academic curriculum based around those things, really focusing on phonics, a lot of social emotional things like that. And so that was kind of my first foray. And then when I moved back to Montana, I decided to open my own school. And that's when I brought in the eco-literacy piece and the mindfulness piece. And I did a stint of working. I was the executive director for a nonprofit green business consulting firm. And that's where I got a lot of the much more deeper education on, as you had mentioned earlier in the intro, corporate sustainability, all of these concepts like conscious capitalism, the farm to table movement, the localization movement, all of these different sort of sustainable economic and corporate business movements. And after doing that for a handful of years, that's when I was like, okay, there's so many of these things that we can teach children if we're really looking to make changes. Because I spent, almost 5 years trying to teach all of these adults how to undo their bad habits. And I realized we need to go back to the beginning with this education because, those early years, 3 years old up through, 7, 8 years old, that's when our brain has the most growth in a human's life. And that's when our default modes are set. And that's the key right there. We've learned this from the trauma side of things, right? We know that what kids are exposed to, traumas that kids are exposed to during these ages imprints and stays with them their whole life. So many adults, we spend our whole adult life trying to undo our childhood traumas and work through our childhood traumas. And so the opposite of that is true. If we are exposing them to important, healthy concepts, those things are going to become their default mode as well. So I took what I'd been learning in on the deeper ends of sustainability and brought it back into education and created Origins. I opened my first brick and mortar school of Origins in 2011. And then I opened the second location in 2013. I opened a third location in 2017, and then the fourth location in 2019. And my original plan was to start franchising. And then COVID came, and I realized that instead of franchising and trying to start new schools, instead, take the curriculum that we'd already been using at all of the locations and package the curriculum itself. That way it can be sold to existing schools everywhere. And because of COVID having, all of the shutdowns were happening with schools everywhere, we decided to also create a full elementary school curriculum. So not only were we selling curriculum directly to schools, preschool age curriculum, we then developed a homeschool curriculum for children kindergarten all the way through fifth grade, full year-round curriculum. And then we've developed a lot of supplemental materials for middle school and high school. So it's very much based in eco-literacy, mindfulness, teaching children sort of what I would say sort of the basic tenets of sustainability, how natural resources are finite on this planet. We can't just continue to take, the importance of clean water, the importance of reducing what we consume and looking at important concepts like the difference between what we need and what we want. In that gap is where the most damage to the planet happens when we're going so much further over what we need into this consumer, lifestyle of things that we want. And that's where damage happens to the planet in all kinds of forms. And so that's really how sort of the whole thing started, how I kind of got to the place that I'm in now, sort of the beliefs around it and the reasons why I'm so passionate about it.
Well, I love that. I totally agree with you, Genevieve. Thank you for sharing that. I agree with you as to how the system really is set up to build workers, to set workers up from a very early age, regurgitate what they consider to be facts, which are not necessarily facts. And it doesn't take account of the needs of a child, especially if the child has special educational needs. And I'm a
Absolutely.
special educational legal advisor here in the UK. And when you mentioned a class full of 75 children, I thought, my goodness, we tend to have 30 here, and that's enough. That creates enough of an issue for our children with special needs, not to
Absolutely.
mention 75. So I can imagine how that must have been quite traumatizing for a child that's sensitive and has needs that need to be differentiated and acknowledged, even in a mainstream environment. And I also love the soul contract that you have with your daughter, because that soul contract became a life journey for you and something that you enjoy. And that is something that I really resonated, because my son also, my soul contract with him led me to special educational needs educator, and also something I enjoy, something I'm really passionate about. So yes, that is beautiful. I'd love to know more about origins, curriculum that you offer. So, say from a Monday to Friday, or does it include weekends? And also, before we go, something about spirituality. I'd love to know more, because this is about what my book, I wrote a book, Daily Soul Bytes book, and it's now available anywhere books are sold online. And it's really about helping us to reconnect to that infinite wisdom within us, to align more to unconditional love. So over 31 nuggets I share, lots of different information that really allow us to reconnect to higher perspectives of unconditional love. And so I really resonate with the way you are talking about nature, how we can become aware of this life force that is within us. We ourselves, just like the trees and the water, are the life force within us. And how we can begin to reconnect and be at one with these different things in the projection that we're making is so
Yes.
key. So first I want to hear about origins, your curriculum, what it contains, what people can expect, if it contains certain things that people who have children with special educational needs can adapt. Because homeschooling is key. For some of our children, they really cannot cope with mainstream. It is not something they can deal with. They have come to this life plane not to engage with mainstream, and they will make your life miserable if you do that. If you try it, it will fail. So there are some children who are not going to adapt to the mainstream, and we need to think about other alternative methods to educate them. So I'd love to know how Origin supports these children and also the spiritual element of.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, the public education system is also a one size fits all system. It is geared towards, you know, it is not geared towards any form of neurodivergence. It's not geared towards the many different learning styles that children have. There's so many different styles of learning. There's auditory learning and kinesthetic learning and tactile learning. And, particularly for boys, little boys, genetically aren't supposed to just be sitting for long periods of time. I mean, girls either, but little boys at young ages need to be up and moving around, and just young children in general need to be moving around. And this, sit still at your desk, raise your hand to speak, quietly read, don't move. All of this is just so counterintuitive to what children's biological processes are happening in their body as they're growing. They need to be climbing and jumping and playing and touching things with their hands and using their voices and interacting with their environment. That's where the learning is occurring. That's so, so important for brain development. And part of what we've done in Origins is we've created a completely different style of learning. So instead of this linear, sitting for class after class, subject after subject, right? Math class, then science class, then reading class, then history class, we have a multidisciplinary approach. So we're combining all of these subjects together, and rather than the subject being the focus is the planet. So we are deep diving into all of the biomes over the whole world. So we're going all over the world throughout the journey, and we have four main focal points, and each of the focal points have what we call a guiding question. And so the focal points are internal, external, metaphysical, and interconnection. And the questions that go with those, it's internal, who am I? External, who lives here? Metaphysical, what's happening? And interconnection, how is it all connected? And so throughout these guiding questions, we're going into the biomes all over the planet and kind of deep diving, learning about, the original peoples, the plants and animals, the, food systems, water systems, economic systems, soil types, weather patterns, all of these things, and how each of these regions are connected to a greater global web. And so a large part of this, and throughout this whole thing, we're weaving in mindfulness and eco-literacy, of course, but mindfulness really being from the most basic level. It's a consciousness. It's a consciousness where we're becoming aware of our bodies in space. We're becoming aware of our emotions, learning how to recognize and manage emotions. Where do we feel emotions in the body? For a child who's feeling angry about something, we're going to explore that. Where do you feel mad in your body? Where is it that you feel it? What does it feel like? Feeling into it. That is becoming conscious. That is becoming mindful. That's starting to make that connection. And so all of these things are so, so important. We know unequivocally that mindfulness and meditation is absolutely beneficial to all human beings. It's become super popular in corporate America and Silicon Valley, and there's, corporations hire and pay big consultants to come in and teach people how to meditate. And we know that, it helps in all the different areas, physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, right? But for kids, if they're able to learn these tools early on, the amount of drama that they won't have to deal with, being able to have the tools to manage these things at an early age is absolutely invaluable. And kids come into this world, children are born into this world connected spiritually, and that they get disconnected over time with the matrix just like kind of coming in and like, putting the wool over and putting the veils over, just with, all of the inundation from, culture and society and consumerism and everything that's being fed to us. And, I won't even get into all of the, the Bluetooth and the Wi-Fi's and all of these things that are unseen, that are disrupting the field and causing this disconnection to happen. So if you can cultivate a child's innate sense of spirituality, their innate sense of connection to the planet, to the earth, to each other, they're already so far ahead. Mm-hmm. And, I really believe that we are seeing so many children being born that are just, back in the day, we called them indigo children, but now it's like there is just this huge resurgence of kids being born that are so connected on such a deeper level. And they have so much wisdom and so much knowledge and so much remembrance. And so I think that, with the way that we approach learning, it's an emergent living system rather than this linear, one thing after another after another. everything is happening in real time. And, you know, really, I think there's a colonial piece to the education system as well that has happened that has, you know, it twists the nature of reality so that people have this idea of what the world is and how different kinds of human beings interact in it. And I think that sort of decolonizing is a huge part of this as well. And you know, really getting back to the origins, the origins is such a crucial piece to this.
Hmm. I love that. I love the curriculum. It's really beautiful. It really targets the need for us to reconnect within. It
Yes.
targets the need for us to become more present. And what tends to happen? Sometimes it takes us years to redo, to reprogram what we have been conditioned with. And I love the way you are now working with young children, and they will have a different trajectory. There's definitely a different species that comes out of all of that. And that is so important. That is wonderful. So thank you for presenting this. This is really beautiful. And I do want
I
to
forgot to, oh, sorry. I was
carry
just
on.
going to say, I realized that I forgot to, you know, I wanted to elaborate a little bit on why it's, I think, beneficial for children with, you know, neurodiversities and different learning styles is because, particularly with homeschool, you know, the parent, the caregiver, the educator, whoever is working with the child, this we've designed this to be very child-led. So rather than being, you know, put in front of them and do this, do this, do this, and this is what you can do, we allow the child, we encourage the child, and we go with, there's so many different options, and whatever the child is naturally drawn towards, we just continue to expand on it, continue to expand on it. So it's a really beautiful, natural way of allowing the child to blossom and sort of uncover what it is that they're resonating with. And you know, we'll offering different things, showing them different things, and seeing what are they naturally drawn towards, because we're all going to resonate for different things and towards different things and have different interests. And it really just takes that pressure off of, you know, that sort of standardized way of looking at things. So
Mhm. And the really key thing about when a system is child led is that you're looking at assessing the child before you even start. Then you're looking at monitoring it and making sure that it stays relevant. You're looking at what is emerging, what is developing, what is now secure. And then you're looking at ensuring that what you need is being transferred to the skills of the teacher, of the parent who is implementing this. Because we're all growing. The system, the origins, or any kind of teaching curriculum has to encompass all of that. The assessment, the monitoring, the development of the skills of those implementing it as well. So I am listening to you and I'm hearing that it's child-led and it's developing and it's about allowing the child's neurodiversity to determine what the outcomes will be, because every child is different.
absolutely.
And it needs to be based on the needs of the child. And I love that. I would love to hear more about the spirituality aspect.
Yes.
How, because you already mentioned something about working in nature, understanding, you know, the needs of different nations, different peoples, the indigenous people, all of that will come into it. And the mindfulness really is about pausing the thoughts in the mind and being aware, self-awareness, awareness of the feelings, the thoughts, and the emotions, and allowing that child to become much more understanding of self with compassion. And self-acceptance comes into that, and understanding comes into that, and most importantly, love. How do you bring them to, you mentioned that as one of the four aspects. This is oneness. I think oneness is so key, because when we can tap into the oneness that we are, And I love that children coming into this earth plane already connected. They disconnect from the spirit being, because we're really spirit beings.
Yes.
They disconnect from that spirit being. How does your curriculum help them to reconnect to that and maintain it and to remember it in their day to day?
Yeah. Beautiful question, and such an important question for life in general. But I think, as you touched on, it's this combination of connecting to nature, but it's the way that we connect to nature. It's, looking at every living thing, and not and even things that many would consider non-living, like elements, minerals, rocks. We look at all of them as living beings, as kin, as family. It's, the tree beings and plant beings and the flower beings and the element beings and the crystal beings, and they're all living beings, whether or not there's breath flowing through them or not. Um, and really understanding that. And children have that capacity. They don't have to have that explained to them. They're
Mhm.
already connected in that way. If you watch a little child just running around, playing by themselves, talking to the birds, talking to the rocks, talking to and so really keeping that understanding that we are all relatives on this planet, that everything on the earth is part of this living, breathing, organism that is our planet, that is our galaxy, that is our universe. And really having that, like you said, keeping the mindfulness piece, but also within meditation, within slowing down, within, having those moments of consciousness that we can find all throughout the day, quieting the chatter, quieting the brain. And because it's always there,
Yeah.
when we're able to quiet that, what they call the monkey mind, or, that sort of the piece that is separating I from
Mhm.
the field, right?
Mhm.
That piece, when we're able to let that quiet down, we are instantly in the field. We are instantly part of the field. And only when that voice comes back do we, kind of separate out. And we are both. We
Yeah.
are separate and we are together. We are a drop and we are the ocean. So it's really, learning how and showing children how to keep being able to move in and out of that, of those, different versions of reality. Um, you know, this isn't like really deeply into the curriculum in certain ways, but my own personal beliefs, I'm definitely somebody who is enthralled with quantum physics and all of the different realms, and it's definitely the imprint of that is in the curriculum. I don't have specific lessons about quantum physics and things like that, but it's part of what we talk about. And we also have a one of the supplemental materials that we have are called exploratory courses, and these are like masterclass, masterclasses. These are conscious masterclass for kids, and we collaborate with people all over the world. And I think you would be an incredible person to collaborate with to create a course. So we create courses for kids, from pre-K all the way through high school on any kind of subject matter. And so I really want to start getting some more courses in there that are more spiritually based. We've got a few right now, but these are the kind of things that make me so excited and so passionate. And I want to continue to collaborate with all kinds of people to bring these beautiful, beautiful things forth to be able to share with children all over the world, really. Um, but yeah, I think it's just, helping to nurture and foster the innate spirituality that everybody comes in with.
Oh, I love that. I love what you said about we are separate, but we are one. We are the drop and we are the ocean. It is true. We need the ego self. It's just
Yes.
about what is driving the ego self. Is the ego self driving itself, or is it allowing the spirit self, the higher self, infinite wisdom, driving, infinite love? This is it. This is it. Wonderful. I would love to be part of your program. Let's hook up.
I would love that. Yes.
And where can people find you, Genevieve, when they want to connect with you?
Yes, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. Origins has an Instagram page. It's just origins.curriculum. That's the same. We have Twitter. It's also at origins.curriculum. Our Facebook is origins.curriculum. Um, originscurriculum.com is the website. So, and on the website, if there's anybody listening that would be interested in collaborating, somebody that has a passion that they want to share with kids, there's a link on the website, a collaboration link to create a course. And we have a whole template. Everything is already done. You just look at it and plug in the information that you want. And we promote it on all of our channels and through all of our social medias and everything. So it's a wonderful opportunity for people who want to share something special with kids.
Oh, absolutely. And do you have any final words to say today before we go?
I'm just really grateful to have had this opportunity to connect with you. I love what you're doing. And I think, the more that people support this kind of, connection in general, connection with spirit, the mind, body, spirit connection, I think is the number one way that we're going to be able to heal this world, that we're able to really put more energy towards the timelines that we really want to manifest. There's a lot of heaviness in this 3D timeline right now. There's a lot of it's easy to get pulled down into it. I often talk about it in terms of gravity, almost, that there's a lot of gravity in the 3D timeline, and that's the timeline of war and political division and natural catastrophes and economic catastrophes and all of these things that are like swirling around that people get so caught up in. And while we need to address these things and we need to make moves in the current time to affect the future, we also have the ability, and I believe the duty, to really be putting energy towards these other higher timelines. It's a delicate balance between, not burying your head in the sand or spiritually bypassing and not paying attention to these things. But it's also very important to really build and move towards manifesting these higher versions and visions of things that we want to see with the planet and with each other.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Genevieve. Honestly, this is so key. For me, I am so passionate about the expansion of our consciousness, individually and collectively, because this heaven on earth is so possible. It's a timeline that is possible. But we have to be ready to let go, to accept. That ego self has to be ready to surrender. It has to heal, it has to let go, and it has to know that it is love. The surrender that we seek can only come from love. It cannot be forced. So all the programs that we're all doing in our own different ways, we're being led to allow those who use our systems as a permission slip. My book, Origins, all these different tools are permission slips that allow us to step into that place where the ego self can surrender, feel safe enough, feel heard, feel understood to surrender. This is key, because that surrender to the higher self is really what gives us our best outcomes. It gives us those preferred timelines of heaven on earth, the 4D experience that we all want. Even as we transcend the 3D, all the densities, all the programming that do not serve us. So this is my passion. And sharing different permission slips on the show is really something that I love to do. So thank you so much for joining me today, Genevieve.
It was my absolute pleasure.
And I would like to thank my audience as always and ask you to subscribe to the Daily Soul Bytes show on YouTube, and also on all the different platforms that we have, Spotify, on Apple, on Google, on Amazon. And I look forward to seeing you again on the next episode of the Daily Soul Bytes show. Bye bye.